Okay, more insight in this one. And before we dive into that, I want to talk about the key briefly again, because it's this theme that has been coming up. So in this video in particular, I talk about the key that powers this matrix reality, or at least a substantial part of this matrix reality. If you haven't seen it yet, definitely go ahead and watch it after this video. It's pretty informative, pretty eye-opening, and it shows you exactly how the key locks into the lock, how it's like in blatant sight, and yet, not as blatant because of all the stuff that's around it, like all the distractions that are around it. Now, this is so funny because once you start digging deeper into the key, you come across this concept in one of the Matrix movies. And there's this channel out there called The Matrix Explained. And they literally have this video on why is the Keymaker so important. So I think what I personally am going to do at one point in the nearest future is I'm just going to take a weekend or take a few days and binge watch all these Matrix movies, because especially the earlier ones, I actually don't even really know what exactly they're talking about, or I just forgot it because it's been so freaking long. And even the last one, which was, when was it? When it came out, like late 2021, early 2022. Even the last one, I barely even really remember what it was really about. It's not even that long ago, but still. And so this is coming up again because they're releasing a new Matrix movie with like a new synopsis or whatever. But yeah, as we know, they're just giving disclosure in these things. Is everything correct in the Matrix movies? No, but they are giving us a form of a script of things, how they do happen. And so in this particular one, which is, from my understanding, Matrix Revolutions, so the movie that came out in 2003, not sure if what that was, the third one or which one that was, but basically there is an actual key maker in this movie. And so you have the entire topic of a key maker, these old programs that are fighting Neo, and the Keymaker himself being a program. You have the architect, which is supposed to symbolize the creator, so one of the gods, because there's more than just one creator, at least from my understanding, like in the real Matrix, not the movie. And then you have something called the source, which I think, from my understanding, that's not the organic source they're trying to put Neo in the movie. So the source that we're talking about, like the real source where we all originated, because we're specks and parts of the source, or we're the essence of the source. I think in the movie, the Matrix movie, is supposed to be something else. I don't know if it's an AI source that they're talking about. See, this is why I want to rewatch them, but I don't think the source has the same meaning as when I talk about the source or other people talk about the source in real life. You have tools, layers of control. And what I thought was personally very interesting is they have these names such as the seventh simulation. And I talk about that when I actually dissect the latest Matrix movie from around 3 years ago, which is, it's already been, like time just goes like that, right? But I talk about how, are we in the seventh simulation? Because they're saying that in that movie and all of that. How many simulations are there really? Is this like the seventh reset? But they also have Zion, and what do you have here? You have like Zion National Park, all this type of thing. So all of these things have meaning. Clearly, these are biblical names. These are names that are part of the script. And so in this particular instance, I will put the 8-minute long clip below in the video description again. But he's basically, or whoever has this channel, it's an AI generated voice. The person is saying how the Keymaker is crucial for this particular Matrix movies, because it basically leads Neo to one of these doors that's supposed to be connected to the source. And so what I personally found very interesting, without having rewatched this movie yet, is just the concept that they're trying to open up several different doors. So they're looking for the door that opens up to the source, but there are several different ones that loop you around, that don't go anywhere, that don't get you there, that get you into other layers of consciousness, other layers of realms and parallel realities possibly. So there is one key that fits into the right door, which is what the Keymaker has. And the architect, like, all of this is somehow intended by the architect. Also, the conflict that Neo experiences, at least from the way he explains it in this short clip. But basically, there's one door and only one that opens up to the source. They're not even saying source, but the source. They're putting the name like that. And so I personally found that really interesting. And that's a little bit more on the key and how relevant keys are. You're talking about, okay, the last thing that I was talking about was the key that powers this matrix reality, or this is a substantial part of it. And then someone was asking if this is the key to the abyss. No, this is the key. This key doesn't necessarily open anything up. So there were two keys on the Vatican's flag. This key in particular is the one that powers this reality. And I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong, because we're always looking for the key out, but there's actually several different keys. And this one in particular, there's something that powers it, such as the electricity grid. If you look at reality like an electricity grid that needs to be powered, that is one way to do it. And I think there are just so many different layers to it. But yeah, I'll put the clip below because I personally found this really, really interesting, that the Matrix movie already talks about this 20-something years ago. And I think it might be worth rewatching a whole bunch of them, because I feel the earlier ones almost have more clues than the newer ones. The newer ones aren't even that good, right? What's also interesting is some of the comments below that. So I'm going to read one comment before I dive into other psychic insight. But one comment was reading, the Keymaker is a password cracker. I mean, it cracks the password, or a decryption software. Also interesting. So they're talking about something entirely different. But if you apply that to this reality, a Keymaker, has like the decryption, able to decrypt this entire reality that we're in. That makes a lot of sense. And someone else commented, in today's world, ordinary decryption software is available. The dark web provides many better ones, but the Keymaker is rather a very important piece in the Matrix. That tells me that even for the machines, the Matrix world is a far reduced version of our current world. They probably lost all of humanity's knowledge, thus can't make a decryption app de novo, and is facing a huge energy crisis. Also really interesting, because when you look at how much energy ChatGPT uses, or supposedly uses, because they have these things, ChatGPT is powered by so and so many, I don't even know how much how many households, 30, 40 households for ChatGPT right now, uses an immense amount of energy. And of course, it's going to be less and less over the next few years, over the last few decades, because the technology is catching up too. But this is what this comment reminded me of. And yes, and the Matrix, I guess it's about the takeover of AI, machines, of humans. And I feel it's really relevant for today's times, right? Like still very relevant, because that's exactly what we're dealing with right now. So the movies 20 plus years ago were telling us a lot in regards to that already. Now, something else I wanted to talk about, just random psychic insights before we deep dive in future videos on other topics. A deep dive I personally want to go into is, where do we go after death, or what happens after death? Specifically, when people voluntarily try to unalive themselves, because I know that's been coming up and people seem to have a false understanding of that in and of itself, or there's just a lot of false information around that. But death in and of itself seems to be coming up more and more. For some reason, this movie called Joe Black, I don't know if you know this movie, but Joe Black came up in my algorithms for absolutely no reason. I wasn't watching anything or whatever. But Joe Black is a movie from 1999, like also quite a while ago. So this is all around the same time frame, like the late 90s, early 2000s, when they wanted to reset everything, when 9/11, all of that happened. So the movie from back then had to do with death. So Joe Black, that's Brad Pitt, who looks pretty lifeless. I do have to say, when I tap into his energy in that particular movie, he actually looks like a complete clone robot, clone bot. No energy field. One of his probably thousands of clones that you have in real life of Brad Pitt. But yeah, he's supposed to be death, or it's supposed to be a movie about death, and is supposed to be a message about death. I don't know. I haven't seen it in a really long time, so I actually don't really know what exactly it's about. I don't remember it being such an interesting movie, but maybe if you rewatch it as an adult, because I was a child back then, there might be a better message behind it. So it could be another movie that's worth rewatching, because when they're pushing these concepts, there's always something, like some hidden message, right? So just this entire death and how people are supposed to handle death, that was another movie. Another thing that came up was this advertisement or commercial in regards to Google Pixel 9 and Google Pixel 9 coming up in the 9 year that we're currently in. Certainly no coincidence. What they're pushing is, I'm just reading from my notes down here, Gemini AI, right? So now we have DeepSeek, we have Gemini, we have ChatGPT, we have all these things that are trying to take over our reality, trying to take over your jobs, you know, if you're a copywriter, if you're this and that, all those things. And this particular ad had to do with transforming people back to the 1920s, you know, the vintage era, the vintage timelines. And what I do have to say, a lot of these reenacting events have been popping up more and more over these past 10, 15, 20 years, probably even more like 20, 30, 40 years. But what is interesting about the 1920s, that was like the roaring 20s, right around the Depression era and right before when everything was reset once again, right? Especially the entire banking system, not just in this country, but in the Western world in general, I want to say. And that was also right in between those two wars that we had. But what I got on it, just psychically reading on it, was that those vintage timelines are actually confusing us more and messing with us and putting us on different timelines energetically too. So you have to see it in a way of, you know, especially when you're very much attracted to that era, very much like in touch with that era. You know, I myself do enjoy attending like jazz age lawn parties or those type of events. I also have several different costumes where you just dress up. You know, it's really easy just to put like a nice mask on and dress up and have like the fake pearls and everything the way they were. Really easy costume to recreate. So I was really much into that too. I had friends groups that were really much into that too. But it does appear that just by doing a whole bunch of these things, like nothing wrong with dressing up and reenacting in costumes, it does seem to mess us up energetically, put us on different timelines, and perhaps even when we watch these type of movies, you know. What was the one Leonardo DiCaprio was in? It was an awful movie, The Great Gatsby. Awful movie, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's an agenda just in and of itself in that movie, right? So they're putting us on different timelines energetically with all these ads and all this desire to be back in time, you know, experience the good old times again. And then another thing was we need to bring consciousness into our body. What I kept seeing was just this entire clown bot factory outside, like in the entire astral world. Want to talk about Iran in a different video, but I really feel Iran is pushing its way forward somehow into power. And the colors specifically that I got when I tapped into this entire, so the astral was looking like this entire robotic AI clown, what like AI clowns, same, like just different type of demons coming through. And the colors that came through very specifically were gold and red. And then I was following this Irish vlogger who's currently in Iran, and she legit posted those exact same colors. Like she was visiting some sort of mosque and it was like the circus show. And those were the exact colors that I saw when I was tapping into the chaos of the astral right now. It's the best I can describe it in words. And so I kind of feel Iran has something to do with the energies we're experiencing right now in some weird sense. I don't know if that makes sense with the rational mind, but somehow energetically, there's something really wrong in that entire area. And you can pick up in that when you read on the astral. Also looking into the light was very hard. And that reminded me, like looking into a random light bulb, that a lot of our light bulbs were replaced with LEDs or are being replaced with LEDs, meaning they have this huge EMF radiation and pollution, and they're also messing with us energetically. There's a lot of energy exchange when you talk to other people, when you do any emailing, whatever, everything online or not even online, but there's always an energy exchange that comes about. So it's important to know when you need to break off that energy exchange. Just, you know, setting up boundaries, extremely important, especially when you do this type of work, when you do psychic work and people always contact you for free information and this and that and whatever. The real abundance, true abundance versus the fake and plastic AI world they're building up. So there is a real abundance money can't buy. And I've been posting more and more about that on my Instagram. But there is this corruption with numbers. A lot of influencers always push these fake numbers. You know, they have the fake followers. A lot of those followers are not real. They're just all these fake bots, fake AI world they're building up. But there is a corruption with numbers. And when people always push the numbers, like always push, and this is not just for influencers, but pretty much anyone who's really in the limelight. You look at mindset coaches such as Tony Robbins, and I feel they're all connected, influencers, the mindset coaches, the business coaches, the entire truther community, the new age world, like all of them. If you're hyped and pushed and you have a certain number behind your profile, there's a corruption that has happened for you to even get there, right? Like that, you're not pushed for no reason. Like the real people are kept down, as we know at this point. They really are kept down. I myself had a real blow up for over 1 million views a couple of years back, and yet my profile, the follower number did not go up, rather it went down all of a sudden. This is on my Instagram in particular, so I'm not talking about YouTube, but I've had that happen once, and then another real blow up right after that, and the same thing. And it's absolutely impossible because every day I was waking up with hundreds of new followers due to that reel, but yet the number would simply not go up. And I think I even had a video on that one in particular, but I'm not sure. So anyhow, there's a real abundance that money can't buy. And when people are really, really emphasizing the money aspect, just as an example, let's just take the example of business coaches. You think the new age world, the spiritual world is a scam, a feast show, a circus show, a feast show. Wait until you actually get in touch with business coaches, because that is a whole new level of scamming, of fraud, of defrauding people and everything. But basically, when you come across these people, also mindset coaches who are legit saying, oh, I just hit a 100K month, or I just made 10 million this year, or I just had an $80,000 launch day. That's always a good one. Like this one girl blew up out of nowhere. She also does these symbols in some of her earlier Instagram content. It's always like the one eye symbol. She doesn't do it anymore, but you definitely find a few of the images where she does that. And I have a video on what the one eye symbol means and everything. And there's a lot of interesting comments below that. But basically, this one girl blew up out of nowhere, literally had 10,000 followers. 2 years later, she's at 300,000 followers. Is claiming she makes like 400,000 a month and this and that. But then the more she blows up and the more people come across her material, the more backlash she's kind of getting. And there's a whole bunch of groups you can be a part of. But one group in particular, like this is a Facebook group from my understanding, a person was actually saying how, or even if you come across like Reddit feeds on this particular person, they're basically saying how the numbers don't make any sense. They're trying to make it appear that, yes, look, I'm legit. I have like my bank numbers, my income numbers, but actually they don't make any sense. You can easily fabricate them. They're not an actual screenshot. They're literally just whatever she put in an Excel sheet or something. And when they were questioned why they were owing so much taxes or whatever, what's really the deal behind it, some of them got blocked, so when they're actually digging deeper because they want to know the truth. Because when you know energetically a person is BSing you, right? You're trying to get to the truth of you kind of like, okay, what's really going on? What's the entire BS behind? Like something's not adding up. And so in this particular instance, it's a business coach where this is happening. And there's an abundance, and a lot of these people are pushing it, like also people who published books on this, who are like in their 50s and 60s at this point, who make the appearance that they're really abundant, they're really rich, they can give you a whole bunch of good advice. There is an abundance that money simply can't buy, and that's not an abundance they're experiencing. A lot of their worlds are just really empty. A lot of them are divorced, have dysfunctional relationships, and one of them even admitted it in an Instagram post. She's like, oh yeah, me and my husband are in couples therapy and this and that, and we're doing so fine though. But then when I energetically look at the picture, her husband's still miserable. She's the breadwinner of the family or whatever. Her husband's still miserable. Nothing really happens in between their relation. Like the relationship is still very fractured. And so there's a cost to everything, is the point I'm trying to make. A lot of them are very ruthless. One person in particular has been called out several times for plagiarizing other people's content. So this person claims she makes like millions and millions and millions of dollars every year. I mean, at this point, who even cares, right? Like the story just gets so old. Once you follow one of them, you follow all of them. This is always the same story. It's like a Ponzi scheme for them to make you buy more stuff because they're disclosing more stuff about their life. But at the end of the day, yeah, they don't really have much to add, or not much value to add, because it's all the same anyhow. But this person in particular is plagiarizing other people's content because a smaller creator who had less than 30,000 followers online was calling her out constantly, like constantly for a year straight, and still is calling her out. had their entire course material plagiarized by this bigger player. They don't care. It's a true clown show. They hang out with all their influencer friends, and all these friends, when you energetically look at their pictures, they look the same amount of greedy. You know, there's not like a single soul in this entire picture because they're completely devoid of any type of soul. That's the type of ruthlessness in that industry. One person, this is a guy, had these really beady black eyes, you know, similar to the Pope in that one video where I actually showed you a picture of it. So once you know their eyes turn black and beady, and that's how you know something's going terribly wrong. Building up something is not as easy as they make it seem. You know, for example, if you want to build up a business, if you want to build up this and that. Also, they're building up this empty AI world, embracing AI, taking away jobs from others with the robot world. So an example I had in regards to that was one person was really embracing AI photographs instead of just going to a regular photographer and taking a proper headshot, which would look a million times better anyhow. But no, they're actually embracing, oh, look, I could just use this AI app and get this AI headshot, and I don't even need a proper photographer to take my shot. And so you're basically taking away the job of the photographer. This is what's happening with the entire AI photographs, and that's why I'm always going to be against them. And you're making it seem like your picture looks more professional when actually it doesn't. It looks like absolute crap, and people who know that industry can tell. So being a devoid of soul of what they promote, keep getting the ruthless, like there's a huge ruthlessness all over, no matter what industry you're in. I got a lot of small bugs and parasites crawling all over too when I was tapping into that. So there's just this huge infestation of people's minds happening once they get so corrupted and they get really focused on the material world, meaning like, oh, you have to have millions of it. Like you see the dollar signs in their eyes, like millions of millions of millions and huge yachts and huge this and whatever. And I'm just mentioning that in this video because it was this huge thing that kept coming through lately, you know, over these past few years as people are more prone to watch Instagram, especially the younger generation. You know, they think it's so easy. Oh, I can just become an influencer. I can just become a YouTuber. I can just become this and that. No, it's not easy at all. Number one. And the reason you are being pushed is because you made a soul deal with the devil and your soul is slowly but surely being corrupted. But even with the smaller channels, when you hear them talking about money constantly and how, oh my gosh, you owe me money for watching my stuff. Or there's this one person who promotes, oh, the next time I get paid, I'm going to get a Tesla. You know, once they like the Tesla car, once they promote all this material stuff, they give you like some sort of tour of their house and you're supposed to be jealous of it, even though it's a really crappy house. Once those things happen, you already know. They're just like, you will never see me give a tour of my house unless it's like a house from 2000 years ago and I'm giving a tour of that because of the architectural value of it or like the archaeological value of it. There's no reason for me to ever let you into anything that private. But the people who do, and mind you, this is also happening with smaller channels, not it's just huge ones. The people who do, and not just with the tour of the house, but the people who do always are fixated on their money, on this and that, you know, that's when the soul corruption happens sometimes. And a lot of times the soul corruption comes from previous lives. So it's not just that their soul got corrupted in this particular life, but it shows more in this particular life. Because we have the means of social media, we have the means of connecting to this huge pool of blackness, the way we didn't have in the medieval ages or like hundreds of years ago, right? And so you have, that's what I had on the entire influencer world. It's all just this fake plastic world. Also, the reason influencers exist is because they want to build up this entire fakeness and make people believe that your life is actually empty if you don't have this, if you don't go to these countries, you don't do this and that, whatever. Another huge one that came through, whose names I do want to mention, was this Gubba Homestead woman, like Guba Homestead or Gubba Homestead, like Gubba Homestead. She has an Instagram account. I believe it has like 1.2 million followers at this point. Never sat right with me why she's never censored. She talks about conspiracy type of things, talks about homesteading, obviously, but also other things, you know, like the plane crash and this and that, whatever, wants to give us like real information, but no, not really. And so she in particular always has like this fake bun. You know, it's kind of like a bun that you wrap around some plastic thing so that it sticks up. Looks completely fake to begin with, but she always has the same the same appearance, never changes it. Maybe changes the sweatshirt she wears or whatever, but that's about it. Always has like the same, like how can you always have the same hair day in, day out, right? It's fake. Like that's not real life. You know, real life, your hair color changes, the hair texture changes over time, those type of things. So always has her fake bun. Was promoted by Dr. Phil on a show and was calling him on that show, oh, you're part of the Illuminati. And yet here she is with her millions of followers, not censored, absolutely not censored. And then the moment you start commenting on her stuff, because I used to follow her for a little while because I was interested in what she had to say. But then once you start noticing they're all controlled opposition, you know, such as I already said with all these other people before, like the Max Spears or this and that. But basically, how are you able to go on a Dr. Phil show, call him an Illuminati and still be around, right? You would be completely exited out if a normal person did that. You wouldn't even, that would be cut out. Like you wouldn't even exist. You know, you would, your entire account would be taken away from you. And so when the moment you comment on her stuff and you actually start to criticize or something like, oh, something's off with you. Maybe you're the fako, right? You're completely attacked by random bots, like completely attacked, viciously attacked, that you don't even want to comment on anymore. You just want to remove yourself from that situation. I feel that's really, that's what all these people are about. You know, influencers creating a fake AI reality, a plastic world that is in return fueling the entire AI perception that they want to build up, this entire AI reality that they want to build up. So it's pretty interesting just to tap into that in and of itself. Whereas there's some real abundance that we have access to, that we can tap into, that has nothing to do with material things, that has nothing to do with abundance. Sorry, that has nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with the material world. It has nothing to do with how fast your car is, whether or not you have a Ferrari or not. And mind you, if you want a Ferrari, that's cool. If there's an actual legit reason for you to have one, but most roads nowadays, you can't even drive that car, right? So the only reason people want to have it is because it's a status symbol, is my point. And so, you know, this entire, the real abundance that money can't buy, it's, for example, community, it's family, it's ancestry, it's health, it's an abundance that the universe just provides when you're in a flow, and there's always enough. And when we become disconnected from that, which is very easy to do, you know, just getting like a corporate job disconnects you very easily from it, because all of a sudden you're on a paycheck, you're on this and that, you're like, you have to, like, oh, okay, so I know if I work 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 or 8 to 6 or whatever, I'm going to get paid this and that, whatever. So I'll get, but you're actually removing yourself from the natural flow that the universe is able to provide to you. And the opposite of that would be the broken homes, the death, the suicidal thoughts, all of that, you know. So there's this artificial abundance that has nothing to do with the tradition, the ancestry, everything. And a lot of images that came through were actually like these really old school potteries, these old school things that are passed down from like a grandmother to a mother to a daughter, or those type of things. Or, you know, there's all these old artifacts, like actual treasures that run in families. And the way I interpret it is, when I was psychically tapping into that, is there's traditional items, traditions are very important, artifacts, you know, there's deep treasures. What is a treasure for you is not necessarily a treasure for someone else. You know, for me personally, the way that comes into my life is I just started selling a few items on eBay as an example. Mind you, these are not like super expensive items. These are items like, you know, random jewelry or stuff that I just don't wear anymore, like random shirts, random whatever. Not extremely, you know, not like thousands of dollars, but I had like this pair of sunglasses that I've never worn. It just didn't fit. I didn't like the way it was. I'm like, you know what? I don't want to donate this. Like, I can actually sell this online somehow. And then, you know, a person can actually enjoy that. So those are like the types of treasures that each and everyone has. And more treasures are like the memories you created. You know, you create memories with other people, with the community you have when you travel to foreign lands, and you don't do it just to take advantage of that country, you know, as in, you know, like the over touristed mentality, but literally just travel because of curiosity. Those are like the things, like the real treasures in our life. So material things don't necessarily belong to that, but material things can carry a lot of memories. Like, for example, this thing that I'm wearing here, this pyrite, just dug it out because looking for more treasures that I can post online. I'm like, no way in hell am I even gonna like be able to get rid of this, because this is something that followed me to Costa Rica, to Australia, to New York City, to this country, that like there's so many memories attached to it. And I feel crystals in general, this is a pyrite crystal, by the way. It's not a super expensive crystal. It's not like a diamond or whatever. But this crystal in particular, I mean, just the amount of memories that it holds and the amount of joy it gave me in my life, those are the type of things. Those are like the real treasures that we have access to. And so if you think about something in your own life that is a treasure to you, that is worth more than any money could anybody anyhow. And I feel when we lose a person, like when a person passes away in our lives that was near and dear to us, that is when we really notice how little money can buy us. And so what I saw with a lot of these influencers, they're lacking a lot of depth in their messages anyhow. And that's really the main problem that we have in a lot of these different pseudo spiritual communities, but also mindset communities, or just communities in general. There's not enough, things just go so much deeper than a lot of people are willing to go and overall discuss. And that's what I personally have the main issue too. There's not just, it's not just black and white. It's not just, when you pass over, this is exactly what happens. You're always going to have this tunnel. No, that's absolutely not true. And I'll talk more about that in a video on where do we actually go when we die and what exactly happens, because there's so many different scenarios that can happen and do happen. But basically, there's a depth, and a death to these topics. They go much, much deeper than most people can even really admit that they would ever go. And it's particularly when you look at people like Max Spears, who was dissected in the video before this one, like most of them just really don't care that much about other people. They just want to make a nice buck with something, whatever they're offering, or whatever controlled opposition, whatever they're controlled by, there's an agenda behind it. And a lot of times the material world does stand right behind that. And so it's hard to find a soul in a lot of these things. I think that's one I wanted to discuss in this one. What else was there? True depth, treasures. So yeah, I'm going to leave it at this one, and then we'll discuss more topics in the next one. I hope this helps someone. Let us know if you find anything interesting, especially with the Keymaker concept, what insight you get from that, and I'll see you then.